Hi, Andy Freed, Raise Radio Voice. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
Hello, Jay. How are you?
I'm great, man. Super excited. First off, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so excited about this. So it's such a unique baseball season. As we're inching closer, just days away. I mean, what are your thought process on going to it? First off, different home outside there at Steinbrenner Field. This is going to be a season for the ages, no doubt.
It's going to be one to be remembered, hopefully for the right things. But in terms of the venue, I mean, I know that there have been a lot of times over the last 20 years that I've left Tropicana Field in April and May thinking, it would have been nice to be outside before things really kick into Florida summer. So we're going to get a chance to do it. Baseball under the stars. Fans around here have never really gotten a chance to do that for Major League Baseball. As a 2-year alum of the Florida State League, I can tell you that the early season months are really nice. And baseball is pretty pure out there, and the fans are going to be very, very close to the action. So, there's going to be fireworks. We've never really had fireworks at Tropicana Field. There can be things like a flyover on opening day, which I've heard is a possibility. So, what can you do? We all would like to be at Tropicana Field. When I drive by it every day, as I know we all do, it sits out there right off 275, and it's a bit of a gut punch every time I drive by it. It hurts. That's been my home for the last 20 years, and it's been Rays fans' home for the last 28 years. So we'd like to be there. It's an impossibility. The next best option was the next biggest park, and that is Steinbrenner Field. So I tip my cap to the Yankees for helping to make this happen, and I tip my cap to the Rays front office for figuring out a way to make this happen. And whether it's in St. Pete or Tampa, it is Tampa Bay's team, and it's been that way since the beginning. And I look forward to it. What else are we going to do?
I know exactly. You got to make the best of a unique and in a weird situation. Actually, took my parents that are in town over on 275 the other day just to look at Tropicana Field, and you never get used to it. Just being able to see and not see the roof there, and even the sign outside it. I mean, it still says Bally out there instead of Fandle, which is kind of weird. And you're just hoping like, all right, we want to get back here. Let's just get back here eventually. But now, if there's one team out there, Andy, that can deal with just the uncertainty of anything, right? It's the Rays. Like, there's other teams that it may cripple them and it may add more questions and add some unnecessary fuel to a fire that could burn up their season. But I feel like this team is equipped for anything, right? So, I mean, going into this season, I know it's going to be unique for everybody around here, but I think if there's one club that can assimilate themselves to a situation like this, it would be the Rays.
Well, I would absolutely agree with that. I think one advantage that ends up happening that probably hasn't been talked about enough is, for all the sentimentality I'm hearing about the Trop, which I'm like, where has this been for the last, 20 years?
Right.
It is a turf field, and there's always that notion of you got to give guys enough off days during long homestands because their joints and their knees and everything kind of gets banged up. Their backs can get banged up a little bit more. They're not going to have that anymore. They're going to be playing on natural grass. So I think that's really a plus that over the long haul this year could be a very good thing. I like the fact that the Rays are going to get a chance to play there a couple of times this week, and an inter-squad game on Wednesday, and then an optional workout on Thursday before it counts on Friday. Once you get on the field, it really is the same game of baseball. Yeah, the dimensions are a little shorter and right, which one would think would help the left-handed hitters, or yesterday as we saw Junior Caminero launch one like it was a Super Bowl off his bat toward the opposite field. But for the pitchers, it's a short right field there also. So they probably got to be a little bit more fine in those fly balls to right. It's a smaller outfield there, but it's still big in left and left center and center. So the field itself will ultimately, it's really the same game. I think the Rays are more than prepared for it because they've had time to prepare for it. I also think that when you're in baseball and you go through things as a team, as a unit, they can be galvanizing. And I think for this Rays team, there always is the world's kind of a little bit against you. And, the Yankee fans and the Red Sox fans are always going to be insulting you. And they're going to pretend that it's their ballpark south or whatever, which it's not. But, okay, I think this helps bring the group together. And it's a young group. So, they've all played in minor league stadiums recently. I think there will be a lot of intensity there because you got 11,000 people right on you. To me, I only see the positive. at this point. We'll see how it plays out. When the weather starts to kick in, we'll see. But a lot of the time in those months, the Rays are going to be on the road. You know, they were able to front load the schedule and switch some series around with other teams. So the Rays are home a lot in April and May when it's still nice. And then when June, July, August, September come, they're mostly going to be on the road.
Yeah, and I love what you said about Junior there, because I remember some of the better lineups that we saw about 10, 15 years ago with BJ Upton, Evan Longoria. They had some big-time success at Yankee Stadium, that opposite field home run that we saw so many times where, you know, yeah, it can hurt you, as you just alluded to, but you can take advantage of it too. And now being prone, it's not like you're going and playing in a ballpark where you have no idea about the dimensions. I mean, this is a team that's in your division, so that can be something you can certainly take advantage of. The Rays escaped one, it seems like, Andy, because when you see a pitcher grab his arm like that, and knowing Shane for, you know, even dating back to his USF days, you know how much that dude loves to grab the ball and toe the rubber every fifth day. And he grabbed me 2 years. Oh, he grabbed me right after the injury. I'm coming back next year, Jay. Let everybody know. And he didn't come back, but that's him. Like, he wanted to pitch so freaking bad last season. When he grabbed his arm, I just, like, it was the buzz. It was the buzz. Everybody was so concerned. Very few times do you ever get the news that we got that it's going to be a nerve irritation and he's not going to be out for as long as we initially thought. But just take me through your thought process when you saw that, when you heard that, and then when we got the news that it wasn't as bad as originally expected.
It was a bit of a crazy play because a lot happened on the play. You know, Christian Campbell was the hitter, and he swung and foul tip one and knocked the umpire down.
Mm-hmm.
So my first thought was at the umpire, and then I saw Christian Campbell staring at McClanahan, which made me wonder. That was kind of weird, which leads me to believe that Shane probably shouted ouch or something a little more peppery, which would be understandable in that situation. And the way he came down the mound so quickly, I thought, okay, but he didn't quite leave the field yet. So Kyle Snyder went out and met him halfway between the dugout and the first base line. And I thought, oh, well, maybe they're kind of using this as an opportunity while the umpire recovers to have a little free chat. But then when he made a beeline into the dugout, and then quickly when Joe Benj came back, the head athletic trainer for the Rays, came back from the umpire, and they made a quick line for the clubhouse, you thought, oh, great. You know, it's been really a very, very good spring training, you know, health-wise for the Rays. This time a year ago, they were dealing with Josh Lowe's injury and Jonathan Aranda's injury and Taj Bradley's injury. Knock on wood, I'm knocking on my desk here at home. It's been a pretty healthy spring training. And for a lot of guys coming back, it always makes you wonder. But to me, and I'm certainly no Dr. J, but I've often felt this, even if you hadn't had your elbow cut open for the second time and had to do all that rehab, you haven't pitched for a while. Right. So the rest of the arm has to make up for some sort of, stress that it's being put under. So if it's just a nerve irritation, that's okay. Sometimes too, and it did make me think of this, the end of spring training in 2007, you can have a very scary injury at the end, and sometimes that can mean an opportunity for someone else. Now, that's not going to happen here to Shane, thankfully, but my mind did go to the end of spring training 2007. The last game that the Rays played in that spring training before opening day was in Sarasota at Ed Smith Stadium, and Greg Norton, who was going to be the everyday first baseman for the Rays, hit a little ground ball towards first, and as he got to the bag, he grabbed his hamstring, and his hamstring was pulled. Carlos Pena, and you may know the story, had already been told he was not making the club. He was driving to Orlando and had just agreed that he would go to Durham. And Neil told me that. I didn't know this part till this year. Neil told me that, because Neil was the voice of the Durham Bulls at the time, that Carlos had accepted and players don't have to. They can just opt for free agency. Right. He had accepted the assignment. Next thing you know, Norton's hamstring goes, and Greg Norton's hamstring should hang at Tropicana Field Hall of Fame, because, as we know, Carlos Pena then put together the greatest offensive season a Ray has ever had, 46 homers and 121 runs batted in. So even if Shane doesn't start the year with the group, it sure sounds like they've dodged a bullet, and maybe it's a little bit more of an opportunity for someone else to be on the club, not in a starting capacity, but it opens a roster spot up for someone else. And ultimately could be a good thing, because Shane's innings, I would think, would be somewhat limited anyway. So maybe in the second half of the year, this could be better, but it sure sounds like it's even better than that. It may only be a few weeks.
How cool is it too, Andy? I mean, we've come to know the guy really in his short time here, but to get Ryan Pepio that nod, I mean, that's a big deal for him. He's such a great person, regardless of how tough he is. He's a bulldog, man. And I told him that to his face. I say, bro, you're a bulldog. You're a throwback. You're a Greg Maddux 1990s. Like you're sweating, your face is beat red. Like he's going to be a guy that really, the elements for him are going to be, you're going to see Ryan Pepio. He wears his heart on his sleeve. I think it's such a cool thing that he gets the nod.
We saw yesterday, even just those 2 innings that he faced the Yankees, and he was facing many of the A lineup for the Yankees. Fastball, changeup. That changeup, like Brian Anderson was talking about on TV yesterday, when he gets on top of it, that thing has some devastating movement. When it comes down a little bit off to the side, it's a little more flat. But when he's got his fastball changeup going, man, he's a really, really good pitcher. And it may not be like the old school, the ace definitely goes. He's one of 5 now, well, of course, 6 really, really good starters for the Rays. I think any of them could have started. It just turned out that it was his day to pitch. That being said, he's earned it. He's a very good young pitcher. And at the same time, that does mean when you look forward a month or so, that when you start on opening day, and opening day is a day of aces around Major League Baseball, he's going to be facing quite often the best of the other teams. So that'll be interesting as it goes forward. That's the plus and minus of starting on opening day. You get the honor, but then you're usually lined up with other Cy Young types around the league as the month goes on.
Yeah, no doubt. And let's look at some of the position players. Anybody out there, any surprises to you? Any guys? I mean, I mentioned Curtis Mead a little bit before, but I mean, not too many surprises. We're not looking at a big time roster turnover offensively. And Andy, when I look at the team this year, I just look at guys that, all right, when outside of a guy like Junior, where you're like, all right, you're just looking for the next step, but you're just looking for guys to kind of, all right, hey man, you're going to get an opportunity. The team believes in you, like a Josh Lowe, like an Aranda, like a Brandon Lau, like a Yandy Diaz. Like, go out there and just do your thing, play the game. And I feel like with that support, stress-free for the most part, I'm excited to see what this offensive, lineup, or what this lineup can do, because, I don't know if we've ever seen in the last couple of years, outside of the year they had that strong start, 13-0, guys all firing on cylinders at the same time. Because last year it was a little bit of a stop and go, and Yandy and Randy really didn't start strong. But if they start well this year, I think this sky's the limit for this offense.
You bring up 2023, and of course, everything went right there in the first 2 weeks of the season. That team scored over 800 runs, which is a lot of runs for a Rays team, because you look back to when the Rays became the Rays and were suddenly contenders. The axe to grind for this team, or the cross to bear, I should say, probably as a better cliche, is scoring enough runs. They've been able to pitch it and they've been able to catch it, but can they score enough runs? And you see the difference in the last 2 years. They may have overachieved a little bit offensively 2 years ago and won 99 games. They, without a doubt, underachieved offensively last year when they scored only about 600 runs. That's a massive drop-off from 800 plus to 600 plus. And there's your difference between a 99 win team and an 80 win team. So this is the season of if, right? If. If that team can maybe split the difference and get to about a league average offense and get into that 700 run thing, don't have to be as great as they were in 23, but certainly need to be better than they were offensively last year, which really, when you look at it, of all the 27 prior Rays teams, last year's team was the worst offensive team we've had. I could never have predicted that would happen, especially after the big year offensively in 23. So, yeah, they need to get off to a good start, probably because they have all those games at home, and you'd like to win those. Right away you've got Colorado and Pittsburgh. Sometimes it scares me to play the bottom-ranked teams early, because I don't think they know that they're not that good yet. Right. I think that can be a pitfall. But as that happens, and those teams have talent, don't get me wrong, but this team has to score runs. To me, the two most important offensive players for the year, on which the season may turn, are the right fielder and the left fielder. If Josh Lowe has a good year, if Christopher Morel has a good year offensively, then I think the Rays could really take off offensively, because you can't put it all on Aranda and Caminero. Those are young guys trying to figure it out in the big leagues. Of course, they need to have good years from Yandy and Brandon Lau. That goes without saying. You'd like to see Danny Jansen hit the way we know he is capable of. And then outside of that, whatever you get is probably gravy. But if Morel and Lowe have good years, and I'll throw DeLuca in there too. If DeLuca can recognize being a gap-to-gap line drive hitter, then this offense could really be something pretty special. And let's not forget, sometime around May, Ha-Seong Kim, who was the Rays' biggest splash, along with Jansen, in the offseason, joins the club, and he's a pretty darn good hitter too and has speed, then that's the recipe. Can they make it happen? We're going to find out starting Friday.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what Kim brings to the table too, because we know we can certainly pick it in the field too. So he's a Rays guy through and through for sure. What about these young players, Andy? Before I let you go, I want to ask you about some of these young guys, and whether it's Chandler Simpsons of the world, or the Carson Williams, or the trademark, like these guys in spring training were opening eyes. People were talking a lot about these young players, and I always like to hear stuff like that when it's not just Tampa driven media. Like that was national driven media. There was people on MLB Network. There was people on social media like, oh, the Rays. And for a long time, people know how good the Rays farm system is and how well they draft and develop guys. But that was a prevalent conversation all spring. How exciting was it to be able to watch those guys do your thing? And if you had to guess, who would be the first guy that we would see come up? And do we have any idea when that could be? Is it injury related, or is it just kind of development related and maybe something in the middle of the season?
Well, that was my favorite part of spring training, and I kind of felt it going in. I wanted to see Xavier Isaac and Trey Morgan and Chandler Simpson and Carson Williams and some of those younger pitchers that we saw. Trevor Martin close out the game yesterday against the Yankees, looking fantastic, and I know there's other ones also. But to me, and this is just me speaking, because I spent 11 years in the minor leagues, and I think you almost never err in keeping a guy in the minor leagues a little bit longer. You almost always err in rushing into the major leagues. The Rays are pretty set with their positional player roster. Isaac was hurt a bit during spring training. Morgan, we saw some flashes. Williams looked pretty darn good. Simpson, to me, could be a bit of a game changer. But where's the fit? Let's not forget also, Eloy Jimenez is accepting his role to go to the minor leagues now, and that's not to be underappreciated, because that's a big league hitter. That's a guy that has a pretty good pedigree when he's healthy of being a good hitter, and Meade ended up beating him out. But I credit Eloy for doing that. I would think that Eloy would be the first guy called up, depending on the situation and if an injury calls for it or underperformance somewhere else or whatever. I don't know. But to me, of the four young guys that we mentioned, I think the guy that could probably have the quickest impact would be Chandler Simpson, because his speed is just so much fun to watch. I feel like I'm watching Carl Crawford again. Any ground ball to the left side, he may very well just beat it out on a routine play. Really good contact skills, but he's probably got to get a little bit better defensively. We saw some good things in the spring. I don't think he needs to get a lot better defensively. I just think he needs to get a little bit better defensively. So if DeLuca can do what he normally does, I don't know if there's really a spot for Chandler or really any of them right now. The Rays at shortstop, let's let Carson Williams develop. Let's not push him. We've got Taylor Walls and we've got Jose Caballero and we got Ha-Seong Kim coming back at shortstop. Williams clearly is the shortstop of the future for the Rays. Unless the other fella comes back, and who knows what's ever going to happen with that. But that being said, Carson Williams certainly looks like the guy that's going to be there at some point. But I always lean towards leaving guys in the minor, not leaving them, let them develop in the minor leagues a little bit more too. Let's not push them too fast. This is a really tough league. Look at a guy like Jackson Holliday last year, who looked as good as any hitter in baseball in spring training. He got to the major leagues and was pretty much overwhelmed and had to go back. So when the Rays bring a guy up like that, they like to bring them up to stay. I'd like to see them be a little bit conservative with the approach. The minor leagues are there for a reason. I remember when Evan Longoria was coming up, Jay, I can remember talking to Andrew Friedman one time when Evan was still in the minor leagues, and I said, what are we waiting for with this guy? He goes, at some point we want to see him slump. How does a guy come out of a slump? Because if you never do in the minor leagues, then you get to the major leagues and suddenly you're in an 0 for 15 and the world's collapsing around you. You've never really known how to get out of it. So I like to see guys develop a little bit longer, and it's really not longer. They're right on schedule. They're right where they need to be. Let's let them develop the way a player should be developed. So when they do come here, that next wave of Rays baseball, I really do think could be very, very special.
100%. Man, it's been great catching up with the great Andy Freed, Rays radio voice. Check out him, Neil Solondz, Chris Adams Wall. The season opener, Friday, the 28th against the Rocky at 4:10 first pitch. Of course, you can hear that on the home of Rays Baseball, 95.3 WDAE and AM 620. Andy, so grateful for your time. I was speaking about this last week of, getting into the business. Our pal Rich Hollenberg is doing a big event coming up. And when I first started doing play-by-play for USF, you and Dave Wills were so gracious to be able to sit down with me at dining and to give me some pointers. And it's something I don't ever forget. So I appreciate all you've been able to do for me over the years. And again, your time today, and can't wait to hear you on the radio again on DAE calling games for our Tampa Bay Rays. Friday, I'll be here before you know it. Thank you, my friend. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks for the kind words. Same to you. Keep doing your thing, man. We'll catch up again.
Thank you, pal.